All right, welcome back to the Powers on Sports podcast presented by Beef O'Brady's, corner of Bush Boulevard and Himes Avenue in Tampa, as well as Hank's Barbecue and the Home Slice Pizza Company. Want to give a big shout out to our sponsors that have just jumped aboard the Powers on Sports podcast. You'll also hear them as part of our Florida Football Insiders podcast, and as well as they're sponsoring our No Quarter Given podcast that are all things Bucks. But I want to thank TJ Maloof and his crew for sponsoring the podcast this year. And again, Mr. Peter Blake, we're bringing Peter Blake in to welcome Peter. Peter's the host of the Sports Web, covers USF football. He's my tag team partner on the No Quarter Given podcast. We are talking all things AFC and NFC South. Welcome back, Mr. Blake.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Get a smile on that face now. Get a smile on that face. I want an A+ performance.
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Game week. It's game week. The preseason's over, man.
I know. Just don't tell my tech that. That's or my dog that.
It's okay. We want to hear we don't mind a dog bark in the background every once in a while. All right. Let's talk all things AFC, NFC, South. If you've not been listening throughout the summer, we've been doing previews of all the divisions. We've done all 6 divisions so far. The last 2 are right now. Week 1 National Football League is here. How excited are you, Mr. Blake, for NFL?
I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I think we've been talking about it all month long, all year long. It seems like this whole offseason has been one of the craziest off seasons we had in recent memory, with just locally here, Tom Brady retiring, then unretiring, then BA retiring, and then all the moves and free agency, all the trades. So it's been amazing. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, especially here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And we're kicking off Thursday night, Buffalo and the Rams. The coronation for the Rams out in LA, a huge matchup. Allen versus Stafford and company. You got McDermott and McVay. You're going to have a great opening night on NBC. Collinsworth and Mike Tirico now taking over for Al Michaels, who's now in the booth with Kirk Herbstreit with Amazon. Lots of broadcasts with Troy Aikman and Buck now at ESPN. So a whirlwind of broadcasting moves as well this offseason.
No, absolutely. And I think, all this broadcasting change isn't going to bring any ratings. That's what they're hoping to do. And lots of money being doled out, if you will. And that starts with Tom Brady, $375 million contract when he's ready to retire, if he ever retires at this point, for Fox Sports. But you're exactly right. It's going to be really interesting this year to see how these broadcasting teams work out.
All right, let's go. Let's get to the NFC South. Let's start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Win the division last year, 13-4. Obviously, Todd Bowles now takes over for the retired Bruce Arians, who's now up in the front office. A couple moves they made in the offseason. They bring in Shaq Barrett via trade. They signed Russell Gage, re-signed Godwin, re-signed Carlton Davis, re-signed Jensen, who's now hurt for the foreseeable future. They lose Alex Kappa to the Bengals. Gronk retires. Those are the big moves draft-wise. No first-round pick, but they do draft Luke Gedeke, who's probably going to start at left guard for them, rookie. They bring in a couple other guys, some tight end help. Biggest question with the Buccaneers, and you and I have discussed this all summer, the middle of that offensive line, the center position now that Robert Hainsey's having to play for the injured Ryan Jensen. No Marpet, no Kappa. What are your thoughts on Hainsey and Gedeke and possibly Nick Leverett, man in that middle of that offensive line?
It's definitely probably the biggest question mark. On top of that, you lose Rob Gronkowski. So what's the impact on the offense with that? Then is Chris Godwin going to be 100%? Is Mike Evans going to be 100%? What are you going to get out of Julio Jones? So plenty of questions offensively. And then you go to the defensive side, if you will. Jamel Dean is going to be the starter over Sean Murphy-Bunting. Can this defense overall stay healthy? If they can, I think they're going to be improved. Of course, it always goes back to Tom Brady. Tom Brady can make a mediocre offensive line, if you will, or average offensive line look great with his decision-making. And anytime you got him, you got an opportunity to go a long way. So we shall see what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do in 2022.
Yep, this is year 4 of the Todd Bowles system. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys, especially this defensive secondary, that's the part of the defense I want to see make the biggest jump. Dean, Murphy-Bunting, Carlton Davis paid big money for. Winfield. You're going to have Logan Ryan back there, a free agent. I want to see this part of the roster elevate and be exceptional, because I think you got You're still going to have a good front four. You're bringing Akeem Hicks to team up with Vita Vea. You got Barrett. You got Tryon Shoyinka. Great linebacker. I want to see the DBs make more plays on the ball. To me, that's the area on defense that you got to see the most improvement.
Yeah, definitely defensively. And again, it goes back to injury. I mean, can they stay healthy? What are you going to get out of Akeem Hicks? Because now you don't have Ndamukong Suh. Is that an upgrade? Can he stay healthy?
Right.
Can a guy like Joe Tryon Shoyinka take that next step forward because they let go of JPP? Can Shaq Barrett return to form? Can he return and have double-digit sacks? What about Levante David? He was only 60% last year. Can he stay healthy? And can Devin White take that next step of progression for him to be that player that we saw just a couple years ago in that postseason, especially versus the Saints?
Last question, we'll get off the Bucks. Todd Bowles transition to head coach. Game management stuff. New York, he didn't have a lot of talent. He's come out and said this is the most talented team they've had since they've been in Tampa. Most depth, most, everything. He thinks this is a better roster than the championship team that won the Super Bowl. Your thoughts on his transition to head coach, going for it on fourth down, managing he's going to be calling the defense. So again, how much time does that take away from his managing of the game and such? Your thoughts, Todd Bowles?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big time key. I mean, can he manage it? Being a defensive coordinator is one thing. We've seen it before with Dirk Cutter. I'm not comparing the two, but it's very much a different story when you're a head coach in this league because you have to game manage, call timeouts. You're running everything at that point, not just the defense. So you're hoping that he's able to do that. And then offensively, what's the impact? Is he going to be no risk it, no biscuit? Is he going to run the ball more? Right. I actually think the offense may be a little bit better because of his defensive mentality. And that may actually help out and make this offense more balanced, if you will, Jason Bowers.
All right. So both think the Bucs are probably the class of this division.
Yep.
But let's get to the Atlanta Falcons. 7-10 last year. Year 2 of Arthur Smith in Atlanta. Matt Ryan goes to Indianapolis in the trade. They bring in Mariota to kind of be the placeholder. They draft Desmond Ridder in the 3rd round out of Cincinnati, who they have high hopes for. They draft Drake London, the receiver. To me, this is a full rebuild. Not a lot to talk about here. Major rebuild in Atlanta. I think it's just a matter of time before Desmond Ridder gets in there. Your thoughts, Atlanta Falcons?
I mean, you got Kyle Pitts. I mean, he's a big-time weapon at this point. You always have to watch out for him. Cordero Patterson was signed. He was surprising last year, not only as a wide receiver, but more than likely a running back. So it's not like they don't have some weapons. But anytime you have Marcus Mariota as your quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. So I would expect to see this kid from Cincinnati eventually starting for them, especially if they're in the rebuild. I don't know what they're doing defensively.
Right.
They're in Atlanta, so you're exactly right. This could be a very, very rough year for Falcon fans.
Let's don't spend a lot of time on the Falcons. Let's go to Carolina.
Right.
Big 3rd year for Matt Rule. This is probably a make it or break it kind of year for Matt Rule. 5-12 last year. Again, not that he has to win 10 or 11 games, but he's got to show some progress. You can't win 5 or 6 games again. They went out and traded for Baker Mayfield to team up with Sam Darnold. Mayfield wins the job. Darnold gets hurt late in preseason. He'd already been named the starter. Mayfield's going to be the starter. They bring in Deontay Foreman, Christian McCaffrey back healthy. They lose Stephon Gilmore, Hassan Reddick. They draft the big tackle from NC State in the 1st round to help that offensive line. To me, their defense is sneaky good. They were pretty decent last year on defense. Do you think Mayfield can be the difference maker to get them to 8 or 9 wins?
Not sure. I'm really not sure, but I think he's an upgrade over Sam Darnold, that's for sure. And that's the reason why you make the trade in the first place. The big key for them is not only quarterback play, but can CMC stay healthy? We know when he can stay healthy, he's one of the most potent weapons in the league. So that's the big time key. It was disappointing. And it seems like, Jason, ever since he got that big time contract extension, his health has gone down. So if you can keep him healthy, they do have some weapons there. And we've seen Baker Mayfield play well in stretches. So I think it's an upgrade. They could be a sneaky team there that could, really sneak into possibly that 2nd to 3rd spot. More likely
wild card, a 6 or 7 wild card seed potentially. I agree.
Possibly.
I mean, like I said, they got some weapons. DJ Moore's a good receiver. Robbie Anderson's serviceable. Again, McCaffrey can stay healthy. Again, I think Deontay Foreman will be a good change of pace guy for McCaffrey to give him a little bit of break. He's a serviceable running back. He showed some good flashes in Tennessee last year. But again, Mayfield's going to be the key here. If he plays well, they got a chance to be competitive because there are some, Atlanta's very beatable. You can probably split with New Orleans. We're going to get to. Don't know if you can beat the Bucks, but I think you can, there's some opportunity here in the NFC for Carolina to play for that 6th or 7th playoff seed. All right, let's go to New Orleans, last team in the NFC South. New coach Dennis Allen takes over for Sean Payton. They go 9-8 last year. Sean Payton kind of retires. There was all the speculation with he and Brady might go to Miami. Is Sean Payton next in line in Dallas, waiting for Mike McCarthy to implode? That's kind of all the rumor around the league. Jameis Winston coming back from a major knee injury. We don't know we know he's going to play, but we don't know who knows how healthy that knee is. They bring in Tyrann Mathieu. They bring in Jarvis Landry, 2 LSU guys. They do lose Teron Armstead, a big tackle to the Dolphins, big time left tackle. They draft Olave, the receiver from Ohio State. Mike Thomas is back, who basically hasn't played in almost 2 years, which is crazy to think that he's been out that long. Is Jameis Winston the answer? They re-signed him 2 years. Do you think Winston's the answer in New Orleans?
I'm not sure. And I don't know how many people can sit there and say they know without Sean Payton. Right. And, he was on track last year, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions before the injury, but they were limiting his passes down. So that was the key. Now, can they do the same thing? Alvin Kamara off the field looks like he's not going to be suspended until next year. He's still a weapon. You talk about Thomas, you talk about Olave. They draft him. They also got Jarvis Landry. So they feel like they're going to have the offensive weapons to compete with a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Defensively, they're still pretty good. But like you said, offensive line, they've already lost Armstead to Miami, and they just lost their tackle that they drafted.
Penny.
Right, for an extended period of time. So they're already getting off to a bad start. So for me, I don't know what to expect with Jameis Winston. Okay, I just have no idea. And then you add onto it, no Sean Payton. Not so sure. Peter King came out today and said, well, they're going to win the South and they're going to be 12-5 and the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Wow.
Look, I don't understand it. King was a guy just a couple years ago that was saying, so what? Jameis Winston threw for 30 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards, but he threw for 30 interceptions. What has changed? The main thing that's changed? Sean Payton isn't there anymore. So to me, I think New Orleans kind of, it goes into the background just a little bit. They still have some weapons there, but it's going to come down to quarterback play. And anybody's trying to convince me that they're going to be a better team without Sean Payton, I got oceanfront property in Arizona. Okay.
And also, same thing with the Buccaneers. Dennis Allen, promoted from defensive coordinator, his second stint as a head coach. He was not very good in Oakland several years ago. Not all his fault, but again, record-wise, it was not very good. He's been there. He knows that system. They seem to like him there. So again, this is his opportunity to prove himself as a head coach. And same deal. Will he be able to manage the team and not just the defense?
And the big time loss is they actually traded Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, which I couldn't believe. He's a highly productive player, and he's been a thorn in the Bucs side. He's now a Philadelphia Eagle. So do you think your defense is going to get better with the Honey Badger? I don't see it. So I think the Saints have lots of questions this year in 2022.
All right, you listen to the Powers on Sports podcast. Peter Blake, host of the Sports Web, is here with us. We're previewing AFC, NFC South. We just hit the NFC. Again, Powers on Sports presented by Beef O'Brady's on the corner of Bush Boulevard and Himes Avenue. Definitely check them out. Brand new remodeled restaurant down there on Himes and Bush. TJ did a great job with his renovation of the restaurant. I was in there last week. Beautiful. They got TVs galore. If you're looking for a place to go and watch games on Saturdays and Sundays, highly recommend Beefs on Bush and Himes for sure. You're going to have a great atmosphere. We're probably going to be there at some points this year doing some broadcasts for some of our stuff. So definitely check out Beef O'Brady's on Bush Boulevard and Himes Avenue in the Forest Hills, part of Tampa. Love AFC, it. Yeah, it's good stuff over there, man. Can't wait to get over there.
Yeah.
AFC South, Peter Blake.
Yes.
Let's stay in state. Let's start with the dreads of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Urban Meyer experiment was a complete disaster last year. They end up 3-14. Doug Peterson's brought in. as the new coach, first year. Trevor Lawrence, again, I think it's a total throwaway year for Trevor Lawrence last year with all the stuff going on with Urban and company. They signed Christian Kirk to a huge free agent deal, bring in Brandon Scherf from Washington. They lose Miles Jack, lose DJ Chark. Their number one overall picks, kind of surprising. They take the kid out of Georgia, Trayvon Walker. Do you take him? Do you take Hutchinson? There was some debate about who you take. Just your thought. It seems like it's a full reset in Jacksonville. They're starting over, trying to establish a new culture with Doug Peterson.
I mean, when are they not full resetting there in Jacksonville? But it's got to be better than Urban Meyer, right? I mean, Doug Peterson has experience in this league, actually won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017.
Yep.
You have a young quarterback. He has to take that next step. You have to throw away that year last year. You got Travis Etienne possibly coming back in the fold. So you do have a little bit of weapons there, but I just think if you can get 5 or 6 or even 7 wins
Right.
at this point, you're winning because, again, Jacksonville has lots of work to do. That's the reason why they drafted the kid out of Georgia. He's very raw. They're rebuilding. I don't think he's ready to play in this league, but they're able to give themselves a couple years for them to build on what they have there with some draft picks and develop. And that's what they're trying to do right now. So with Trevor Lawrence, very disappointing, but he wasn't helped out by the coaching there and then by the injury situation, but especially the coaching. So anything is better at this point than Urban Meyer.
And I think Doug Peterson's professional approach is going to be much needed in Jacksonville. I think they're going to win 5 or 6 games, but I think they're going to be a thorn in the side of some people, whoever they play. I think they're going to be much more buttoned up, professional. They may not win many more than 5 or 6, but I bet they're going to be kind of like Detroit was last year in a lot of games. They might lose them late because of inexperience and youth, but I think they're going to be a pain in the neck to some people, especially in the AFC. So let's head to Tennessee. Mike Vrabel, 12-5 last year. The disastrous loss in the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill's performance to Cincinnati. They add Robert Woods, they add Austin Hooper, but a big loss in A.J. Brown. They trade A.J. Brown to Philadelphia. More of a salary cap situation than I think talent. They get a nice haul back of draft picks. They lose Roger Saffold, one of their linemen. They draft Trayvon Burks, the receiver out of Arkansas, first round. They draft Malik Willis, maybe the QB of the future, in the 3rd round. Just your thoughts on the Tennessee. Obviously you got Henry. You got, not a lot of skill guys outside of Derrick Henry in Tennessee.
Well, yeah, Traylon Burks, who they're depending on, if you will, Robert Woods coming off the injury. They hope that he can, give them something. But I think it's make or break year for Ryan Tannehill, and I think that's the reason why you draft him in Malik Willis. Now, the question is the future now, or is it in the next couple years here? Obviously, they're disenchanted with Tannehill's play. And then defensively, you have a defensive tackle like a Jeffrey Simmons who may be able to take that next step. One of the best young defensive tackles in this league. Besides that, though, I think it was disappointing that they lose in the 1st round and the way they lost. So still have Derrick Henry there. They're going to depend a lot on him. I took him as my number 1 running back, so I'm hoping that pays dividends. But the question is, once again, quarterback play. And when is the future for Mr. Willis? If Tannehill plays bad and he starts to struggle, maybe he gets the hook, and we'll see what kind of loss A.J. Brown is to, like you said, that skilled position.
And their defense was okay last year. They were average at best. A big loss in the last few days. Harold Landry, their big-time defensive end, blows his knee out in practice. He's done for the year. That's going to really hurt that pass rush. All more of the attention is going to go to Jeffrey Simmons. And again, to me, their biggest issue is the passing game. Henry's going to be pretty decent in the running game. We know that. But can they throw the ball enough to get that 8th and 9th guy out of the box? Again, and are they good enough at wide receiver other than Robert Woods, who's a good player but coming off an injury? Are they good enough at wide receiver to open up that running game for Derrick Henry?
Agree. Absolutely agree with that. And I think that's the biggest question going in, as we always talk about. You win with your quarterback, you live with your quarterback, you die with your quarterback, and we'll see if they're living or they're dying at the end of the year.
All right, let's go to Houston.
Yeah.
Our buddy Lovie Smith in charge.
Yeah.
He gets the job. They go 4-13 last year. again, all the Deshaun Watson debacle, all that stuff is finally done. They get a haul of draft picks from Cleveland to unload Deshaun, all that stuff, all that story going on with Deshaun getting out of Houston. And of all things, the first game he's unsuspended is week 13 at Houston, of all freaking things that the NFL does. He goes back to Houston, his first game back, which is crazy to think of why the NFL one way or another didn't either extend the suspension one more week or somehow figure out a way for that not to happen. Because to me, that's a disgrace for him to go back to Houston that first game. Running back wise, it sounds like the kid from Florida, Damian Pierce, is going to be their running back. They draft Stingley, the cornerback out of LSU, Kenyon Green, offensive line, John Mechie, big time wide receiver from Alabama, but he has unfortunate health issues. He has a cancer diagnosis. He's not going to play this year. Just totally unlucky situation there. Obviously, Davis Mills is the guy they like. They like him at quarterback. They're going to give him another year to see where he's at. Just your thoughts on the Houston Texans.
I mean, well, what's the worst team, them or Jacksonville? I mean, they're rebuilding also. Davis Mills, that's the big time question. Although he was surprising last year, played somewhat well. They still have Braden Cooks there, who's very productive. Like you said, the rookie Pierce out of Florida, can they get something out of him? And defensive, like Lovie Smith is a defensive guy. So can that defense improve? Can they build off of last year? Because they did have some good games, but they are a ways away from being in playoff contention at this point. And I think Jacksonville and Houston are basically going to fight it out for the cellar in that division.
The only, one thing I would say is, again, Houston will have a chance to win a couple games because Jacksonville's not very good. Yeah. Tennessee's very gettable. They could probably split with Tennessee.
Who's better, Jacksonville or Houston at this point? I think Jacksonville's actually.
I would give Jacksonville, yes, with Doug Peterson. With Doug Peterson there in charge, I would give him the edge over Lovie Smith and Davis Mills. Start, no doubt about it. No doubt.
Right. Correct.
All right, we're done with Houston. Nothing else to talk about with the Texans. We think they'll be in the top 5 of the draft next year, no doubt.
I mean, I definitely think they're going to be in the top 5, and then on top of it, with getting all the draft picks from the Browns, and you put yourself in a situation where the future is bright. So we'll see if they have the quarterback there, because that's a big year for him. And if they don't, then we know that there's teams out there that have pushed the reset button and
draft a quarterback.
Right, and very well maybe the Houston Texans year after, if they don't feel like Davis Mills is the guy to get them there, or he's the quarterback for them for the future, they may go out and draft somebody.
And this is a big quarterback class coming out in college. You might have Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. You're going to have 3 or 4 big quarterbacks that'll get drafted in the top. Anthony Richardson, who we saw play for the Gators over the weekend. You're going to have this is going to be a big quarterback class. So there's going to be 3 or 4 guys available to Houston potentially in the top 10 if they're in the top 10. So, all right, let's go to Indianapolis.
Yes.
Kind of the team who we think is probably the best team in this division. Them in Tennessee probably, but I think with the addition of Matt Ryan, again, Frank Reich, 9-8 last year, the Carson Wentz experiment turned ugly at the end. They blew it the last 2 weeks of the season. Don't make the playoffs. They bring in Matt Ryan, they bring in Stephon Gilmore, they bring in Ngakoue, they get rid of Wentz. They've got Pittman, no more T.Y. Hilton, it looks like. They've been going through a quarterback carousel these last 3 years with old guys. Wentz, Rivers, now Matt Ryan. Do you like the Matt Ryan marriage with Frank Reich?
Yes, if they can protect him. If they can't, then they're in big trouble because, as we've said before, Matt Ryan can still throw the ball, but he's on somewhat of a decline. Though he is behind one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. And with that being said, I think the Indianapolis Colts are probably the scariest team, not only in the AFC, but in the National Football League. You look at their moves, their defense is going to be improved. You talk about it, Gilmore, and of course, Ngakoue. And then you add a quarterback that can make those throws. And I think he's an improvement over a Carson Wentz. They believe that. And of course, the player that could have been the MVP last year, and Jonathan Taylor, really showed out. So can he duplicate that success this year? If he can, the Colts are a dark horse as a Super Bowl contender.
Couple things here. One, the Colts were excellent at running the ball, but their pass protection was not great last year. Carson Wentz got hit a lot. I know part of that is probably him holding the ball too much, but they were not great in pass protection. They've got to be good in pass protection because they do not have elite wide receivers. Michael Pittman is the number 1 guy. He's good. Has he proven to be a number 1 yet? I don't know about that. You got Alec Pierce they drafted out of Cincinnati, who they think is going to be a player for them. My question for them is, can they, if they're behind by 10 or 14 points, can they throw the ball 35 to 40 times and get back in the game with the wide receivers that they have and the tight ends they have?
I mean, it's a great question, but don't you feel more confident with the Matt Ryan than you feel with the Carson Wentz? And I think that's the point. That's the reason why you're able to trade the picks that you traded to the Atlanta Falcons to get a Matt Ryan, because you believe that he's a lot more capable as a starter than a Carson Wentz.
And again, professional. He's not going to have any issues in the locker room with the chemistry and all that. Here's the other sneaky move that you got to think about. Defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus leaves to go to Chicago to be the head coach. Who takes over that defense? Will they be able to play to that same level that they've been playing the last couple of years with Eberflus calling the plays on defense?
Certainly have the talent. DeForest Buckner in the middle. You talk about it in the Ngogwe, Gilmore.
Leonard at middle linebacker.
Yes. I mean, they have all the talent in the world. They really do. And a lot of people are just kind of overlooking them. But I'm telling you right now, don't overlook that team. That team is a dark horse.
And you're right, if Jonathan Taylor stays healthy, look for another 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns out of him. He's on my fantasy team. He was my guy, my first-round draft pick. I had the number 1 overall pick. I took him number 1 overall, but he's a stud if you can keep him upright. So do we think Indianapolis wins this division, Peter Blake?
I do. I think the Colts win this division easily. And of course, you can't lose to Jacksonville on the last week in order to clinch a playoff. That was just embarrassing. So to me, Indianapolis wins the division. You have Tennessee at second, and then everybody else follows. We talked about it. I think Jacksonville's third, and Houston, of course, finishes last. Maybe wrong about that. Maybe switched on that, but I think Jacksonville will be better this year. Anything, again, is better than Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer right back on the Fox broadcast for their pregame show, like he didn't miss a beat. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Just go kick a kicker. Just do that.
Oh my God,
do that on the broadcast.
So it seems like we both like Indianapolis and the Buccaneers to win the divisions. Do you think Indy and Tampa? Or do we think they're both Super Bowl threats?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you got Tom Brady, and we say it all the time, you're a Super Bowl threat. And again, I do think this team is very talented. They just got to get some questions have to be answered. They have to get some players back healthy. Once again, you hope Godwin is 100%. You're not sure if he's going to be. And what's the impact of Julio Jones? What's the impact of that offensive line? What's the impact of Akeem Hicks on that defensive line? Does that defense get better? Does that team overall get better with the defensive mentality of a Todd Bowles?
Well, great job, Peter Blake. I can't wait for this NFL season to start Thursday night and then in full force on Sunday. Peter and I will be here covering the league for you all year long. Again, we'll be at Beef O'Brady's. We'll be doing some other stuff. We'll be giving you out plenty of content. Peter, tell everybody where they can find you and your great show that you do multiple times a week as well.
Well, hopefully if this tech can cooperate, we'll be on tomorrow night. We're usually on Monday and Wednesday nights on I Love St. Pete. It's the Sports Web, the evolution of sports talk television. Do 3 things. Bring your passion. Bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. On Facebook and YouTube, like and subscribe to the Sports Web on all those platforms.
And give Peter one more plug. He's going to be covering USF football a bunch of this year. He's also probably going to be covering the Buccaneers home games and such. So Peter Blake is making some moves here in the Tampa Bay sports market. So keep up the great work, man. I look forward to us working together all year long here. We're going to give you some great content on this podcast, on the No Quarter Given podcast. So definitely go subscribe, rate, and review to all of our podcasts, to all of our YouTube pages. I've got a YouTube page, Jason Powers Sports Channel, where you can see all these interviews will be on here as well for all the podcasts. Again, college. Also, I'm the Florida Football Insiders is part of the College Gridiron Coast to Coast podcast network, who's kind of quarterbacked by our buddy TJ Reeves from Buccaneers Radio. We got 9 different podcasts all over the country. So definitely check us out. Again, subscribe, rate, and review at JPost Sports on Twitter. Love to hear your feedback and your comments. And Peter Blake, I believe I'll see you on Sunday for Week 1 National Football League.
Let's go.
Let's go. We'll be right back. Powers on Sports Podcast.